industry was being attacked, working with the most trusted, the most well-regulated, and even the best capitalized partners.
If the world's biggest financial institutions were quietly building the new global money system, would they tell you about it? Of course not. They'd test it quietly, behind closed doors, in private networks, and only a few names would ever get invited to the table. One of those names is Ripple. Most people think Ripple is just a payments company fighting the SEC. But behind the scenes, it's been working with the Bank of England, the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, and several central banks on something much bigger, the future of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Yeah, the same Ripple that retail investors treat like just another altcoin project is helping design the next generation of money. Let's rewind for a second. Back in 2017, the Bank of England launched a research collaboration with Ripple to test out what they called interledger settlement. At that time, Ripple was already way ahead of everyone else, offering real-time gross settlement with liquidity solutions through XRP. The Bank of England's conclusion? Ripple's tech showed promising results for synchronizing payments across different ledgers. In simple terms, they proved that Ripple could make cross-border payments settle instantly, even across different banking systems. That experiment became the foundation for something bigger, the BIS Innovation Hub. If you don't know what the BIS is, let me break it down. The Bank for International Settlements, based in Switzerland, is like the central bank of central banks. It's where monetary authorities, from the US Federal Reserve to the European Central Bank to the Bank of England, come together to coordinate financial systems. In 2021, the BIS created its Innovation Hub, a global sandbox for testing cross-border CBDC networks. Projects like Dunbar, Icebreaker, and Aurora were launched to explore how national digital currencies could talk to each other. And guess which company's infrastructure and philosophy align exactly with what they're building? You guessed it, Ripple. Because Ripple has been saying it for years. We don't need one global digital currency. We need a network that connects them all. That's precisely what BIS is testing right now. Interoperable CBDCs that can communicate and settle value across borders. And Ripple has already done that at scale. See, Ripple's XRP ledger is ISO 20022 compliant, the same messaging standard global banks are adopting right now. That means its system speaks the same language as the world's banks. It can plug into existing infrastructures without breaking them. That's a big deal. While most crypto projects are shouting about decentralization, Ripple is sitting in regulatory meetings with the very people designing the rules. It's not rebelling against the system, it's quietly building it. And that's exactly why the Bank of England chose Ripple's framework to help model how a digital pound could function inside the UK's future economy. They tested everything, from instant settlement to liquidity bridging to compliance checks. They wanted to see how central banks could move money like information, without friction or delay. That's the holy grail of modern finance, and Ripple has the code for it. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The BIS isn't just testing CBDCs in isolation. They're running cross-border pilots like Project Dunbar, which connected central banks in Australia, Singapore, South Africa, and Malaysia. The goal? To see if CBDCs from different countries could transact instantly without intermediaries. And this is exactly what Ripple's been doing for over a decade through RippleNet, connecting banks and payment providers across 55+ countries. When you put the pieces together, it becomes clear. Ripple is not trying to compete against the global financial system. It's becoming part of it. The same central banks that once dismissed crypto are now testing Ripple's solutions to design their future rails. So when you hear people say, CBDCs are coming, remember this, they're not just coming. They're being built, tested, refined by the world's most powerful institutions right now. And Ripple's fingerprints are all over it. The Bank of England is building the digital pound. The BIS Innovation Hub is testing cross-border CBDCs. And Ripple, with its proven network, liquidity technology, and XRP bridge asset, is already part of the testing ecosystem that ties it all together. Most of the world still thinks crypto and traditional finance are on opposite sides. But Ripple quietly proved they're on the same team. building the next chapter of the global monetary system. And the best part? It's all happening right under everyone's nose. So now that we know Ripple is sitting at the table with the Bank of England and the BIS, let's zoom in on how their tech is actually being used. Because this is where things get fascinating and just a little bit unsettling. We're talking about the architecture of the new financial internet. And Ripple is one of the engineers. The story starts with something called the Interledger Protocol, or ILP. This is Ripple's brainchild, a design that lets any ledger, whether it's a bank database, a blockchain, or a CBDC system, communicate and transfer value between one another. Think of it like this. Right now, the world's payment systems are like different languages. Swift speaks one, Visa speaks another, and crypto networks speak dozens more. The Interledger Protocol is the translator. It lets money move between systems instantly without friction and without the need for intermediaries. When the Bank of England tested Ripple's ILP, they found that it could settle transactions across two separate systems in real time without compromising data privacy or compliance. That experiment may have been just a proof of concept back in 2017, but it became the foundation for what the BIS now calls multi-CBDC settlement. In other words, Ripple's blueprint became the reference model. Now, let's talk about the Bank for International Settlements Project Rosalind, one of the most important CBDC pilots that most people have never heard about. This project, led by the BIS Innovation Hub in collaboration with the Bank of England, explored how a retail CBDC API layer could connect commercial banks, fintechs, and central banks all on one digital platform. And here's the twist. The architecture design of Rosalind looks eerily similar to what Ripple's been doing for years. The focus was on programmability, interoperability, and instant settlement, the three things Ripple's XRP ledger, XRPL, does naturally. Ripple's own CBDC white paper outlines an almost identical vision. Central banks issue and control their digital currencies, but transactions are handled on interoperable private ledgers that can connect to other national systems. This means even if a country builds its own CBDC, Ripple's framework can still link it to others. That's what the BIS calls the Universal Connector Layer. Now, here's the part where XRP, the token, becomes critical. Let's say Nigeria's digital naira needs to send value instantly to the UK's future digital pound. They both use different CBDC systems, possibly built on different technologies. So how do you bridge them? Ripple's answer: on-demand liquidity, ODL, using XRP as the bridge asset. This is what Ripple's been offering to over 70 financial institutions globally: real-time currency conversion without pre-funded accounts. For central banks, this means one thing: efficiency. No need for huge reserves locked in Nostro accounts. No dependence on Swift message delays. No bottlenecks. And the Bank of England understands this. They've explicitly noted in multiple reports that future payment systems must support real-time synchronization across ledgers. Ripple already does this with ODL powered by XRP's liquidity mechanism. So even though Ripple rarely shouts it publicly, XRP is the quiet bridge asset in testing for what could become the global CBDC highway. Now, here's where things go global. Ripple isn't just talking to the Bank of England. They've had discussions or partnerships with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, testing cross-border remittance frameworks, the Royal Monetary Authority of Bhutan, testing a Ripple-powered CBDC pilot, the Republic of Palau, building a USD-backed stablecoin on the XRPL, and even collaborations in Hong Kong and Dubai, aligned with BIS regional innovation hubs. Do you see the pattern here? Every one of these pilots aligns with the BIS goal: a connected network of national digital currencies. Ripple isn't building individual islands. It's building the bridges between them. Let's connect another dot: the Digital Pound Foundation. This UK-based initiative is helping the government explore the design of the digital pound, and Ripple is a founding member alongside Accenture, EY, and Avalanche. That means Ripple isn't on the sidelines watching this happen. It's inside the think tank, helping shape policy, architecture, and interoperability frameworks. And guess what? The Digital Euro Association, which Ripple is also a member of, is working on similar objectives for the European region. So when you hear BIS talk about cross-border CBDCs, Ripple's already part of both sides of the bridge. They're literally everywhere the conversation about digital money is happening. Now, let's take a step back, because while this tech sounds incredible, it also raises the big question: who controls it? Ripple's network makes money move frictionlessly, but when integrated into central bank systems, it could also mean programmable control over how and when money moves. That's why projects like Rosalind focus on API layers, because whoever runs the APIs controls access to the financial network. And if Ripple's infrastructure becomes the backbone of these systems, then it's sitting at the core of how digital money will flow globally. That's powerful, but it's also a sign of inevitability. Whether it's Ripple, Swift's ISO upgrade, or BIS own projects, the direction is clear. The world is moving toward a unified settlement layer. And XRP, with its role as the liquidity bridge and neutral asset, fits perfectly into that new financial architecture. So when the BIS and the Bank of England talk about interoperable CBDCs, they're not dreaming. They're referring to an infrastructure that's already been tested, proven, and scaled by Ripple. The irony? Most of the world still sees XRP as just a speculative token. But the real story is happening in boardrooms, not on crypto Twitter. While others chase hype, Ripple is literally helping central banks build the future rails of money. And when this system finally goes public, it won't be about who bought the dip. It'll be about who understood the shift. What's really being built right now is the backbone of a programmable financial world, a world where money moves as freely as information does today. And Ripple, whether people realize it or not, is one of the architects. To understand why Ripple matters here, you have to know what the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, actually does. It's not just another financial institution. It's the central bank for central banks. The BIS sets the rules, frameworks, and pilot projects that influence over 90% of the world's central banks. So when the BIS says we're testing interoperability between CBDCs, that's not theory. It means global coordination is already happening. And if Ripple's technology, the Interledger framework, the XRPL, and its liquidity model fits that vision, then it's no longer competing with banks. It's integrating with them. That's the quiet revolution happening behind the scenes. A few years ago, the idea of central banks using blockchain sounded like science fiction. Now, over 130 countries are exploring or piloting CBDCs. The Bank of England and BIS are working on Project Rosalind. The European Central Bank is testing cross-border digital euro corridors. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority has run multiple interoperability trials under the BIS Innovation Hub. And Ripple is directly involved with Bhutan, Palau, and multiple central banks across Asia and the Middle East. This is no longer an experiment. It's a coordinated shift from traditional settlement rails to blockchain-based interoperability frameworks. And who's leading that conversation in the private sector? Ripple. Here's something few people outside institutional circles talk about. Ripple isn't just building payments infrastructure. It's advising central banks on CBDC policy. Its CBDC white paper reads like a blueprint for what the BIS is currently implementing. A world where central banks maintain control over issuance and compliance, but where interoperability across borders is achieved through neutral bridge technologies. That neutral bridge technology? That's what XRP represents. A non-sovereign, liquid, and fast-settling asset that can move between currencies, networks, and jurisdictions without being tied to any single government. So even if the UK, Japan, or Nigeria builds a separate CBDC system, Ripple's architecture allows them to connect through a common bridge. That's how global settlement layers begin quietly, piece by piece. Here's the thing: banks don't care about hype, they care about efficiency. They've spent decades stuck in the slow maze of SWIFT messages, reconciliation delays, and high cross-border fees. Ripple's tech fixes that, not by replacing banks, but by upgrading them. And it's not just small banks. RippleNet has connected some of the world's largest financial institutions, including Santander, SBI Holdings, Tranglo, Novati, and partners aligned with HSBC and Standard Chartered. They're already moving real money through Ripple's corridors. So when central banks explore Ripple's CBDC model, they're not adopting crypto. They're adopting infrastructure that already works. And XRP's role as the bridge asset becomes the logical next step once interoperability scales globally. That's the genius of Ripple's approach. They didn't start by trying to destroy the banking system. They started by making it faster. Now, let's look at the bigger geopolitical layer because this is where it gets wild. As the US dollar's dominance faces new challenges and BRICS nations push for multipolar settlement systems, interoperability becomes the real battlefield. China's digital yuan, India's e-rupee, Europe's digital euro, and the UK's digital pound. All these systems need a neutral bridge to talk to one another. That's exactly where Ripple fits in. The BIS doesn't want a fragmented financial world. It wants connected digital corridors that can settle instantly. Ripple offers the software, the liquidity model, and the neutral digital asset to make that happen. So while people argue over meme coins and ETFs, Ripple is literally helping define the plumbing of the new financial order. This isn't a retail crypto story anymore. It's an institutional power play. Here's the part that'll shape our next decade. CBDCs will make money programmable, meaning governments can embed rules directly into currency. Payments, taxation, even stimulus, all could be automated. The question isn't if this happens, it's who builds and maintains the system that allows it to function globally. Ripple's infrastructure could end up as that global layer, not controlling the money, but controlling how money moves. And that's even more powerful. Most people think this global digital financial system is years away. But if you read between the lines in BIS reports, Ripple's pilot projects, and central bank statements, you'll realize it's already here. Just not public yet. We're watching the testing phase of the future. When it goes live, most of the world will wake up after the infrastructure is already in place. By then, Ripple won't be asking for permission. It'll already be integrated. While most people are still arguing over Bitcoin ETFs and short-term price swings, Ripple is quietly building the infrastructure that the entire financial world will depend on. This isn't about hype anymore. It's about positioning. Because when you connect the dots, the Bank of England, BIS, Digital Pound Foundation, CBDC pilots in Bhutan, Palau, and the UAE, you start to see a clear picture forming. Ripple is not chasing approval anymore. It's being adopted piece by piece by the very institutions that once ignored it. And XRP, it's sitting right in the middle of all this. A neutral, liquid, fast-settling digital bridge that can move value between currencies, between banks, and soon between nations. That's not a theory. That's the exact system being tested in live environments right now. At some point, and it might happen faster than most expect, these pilots will quietly transition into production systems. And once CBDCs start settling across borders, they'll need a liquidity bridge. You can't move billions or trillions instantly without a neutral asset facilitating the transfer. That's XRP's moment, when its utility stops being potential and becomes essential. It's not about speculative pumps anymore, it's about financial plumbing. And once a system becomes plumbing, it doesn't disappear. It just runs everything underneath. So when people laugh about XRP being stuck, just remember, the world's most powerful financial institutions are testing on Ripple's rails right now. And the price won't wait to move until CNBC announces it. It'll move when the system flips live. If you're watching this video, you're early, painfully early. The same way people who understood the internet before 2000 were early. The same way people who saw the rise of mobile payments before 2010 were early. Ripple isn't building a crypto company. It's building the backbone of global value transfer, the next internet of money. And XRP holders, you're not just holding a coin, you're holding a piece of that future infrastructure, a key to a system that's already being adopted by the world's financial elite. So the next time you hear about CBDCs, don't just think government coins. Think interoperability. Think settlement layers. Think XRP. If you made it this far, you get it. You're part of the small group who actually understands what's happening behind the curtain. So do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below with the words, "I'm holding until the switch flips." Because once this new system goes live, once XRP becomes the bridge for trillions in daily liquidity, the conversation will completely change. And when it does, you'll remember this moment, because you saw it before everyone else.